If you're a mental health therapist like myself, you may be wondering, should I go the self pay, private pay route, or do I need to stick with insurance? And if you are struggling to answer that question, this video is for you because today I'm going to go through the pros and cons of each from my perspective and experience as a private practice owner. And then I'm also going to give you some questions at the end to help you figure out what makes the most sense for you and what's really the right answer for you and your practice and your financial situation. So let's break it down. So, first off, I really don't think that there is a right answer here. I think it really is based off of a number of factors and the answer to the questions that I'm going to give you a little bit later in this video. I see a lot of therapists, unfortunately, bashing other therapists because they have an answer one way or the other on this question. And I absolutely hate that. So we're not doing that in this video. This is strictly to help you figure out for yourself what makes the most sense because that really is the most important piece. I really don't care what everybody else is doing. And I encourage you not to care what other people think about what you're doing. That's neither here nor there. It's all about you and what makes the most sense for you and your practice and what feels right. So, I'm going to give you the pros and cons from my perspective on self pay versus insurance. So, let's start there and let's hopefully give you some context into what might be some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks, and just some things to consider despite what route you go down. All right, let's talk about insurance first. There are a lot of pros to being in network with insurance. I myself, in my private practice now, am not a network with insurance. However, prior to opening my practice several years ago, I was always in network once I became licensed because of the agencies that I was working for at the time. And so I didn't have a lot of say on that. I really didn't have say until I became a private practice owner myself. And I have seen there's a lot of positives and benefits to being in network with insurance. So let's talk about the pros first, and then we'll get into the cons. So the first piece is people want to use their insurance benefits. Most people, not everybody, but a lot of people have health insurance. They pay for health insurance to be able to make sure that they can get good medical care and medical treatment. And so a lot of people want to take that hard earned money that they're spending on their insurance premiums and they want to be able to use that to pay for services, which that makes total sense. So you are going to find that a pro of being in network with insurance is that you are going to really see people being drawn to you because they see that you're in network with their insurance and they want to use those benefits. Even if nothing else about you is really screaming to them, this is a therapist for me, you are naturally going to be on their list before they even talk to you if you're in network with their insurance and that is the forefront of their mind. And the second pro that I see is insurance generates a lot of referrals. So, you simply being in network with insurance, you are more likely to get referrals from the insurance company in particular if someone calls and says, I want to know who's in network with my insurance. And also from a standpoint of other people knowing that you take insurance. And if someone asks you, hey, do you know of a therapist in network with my insurance? And someone says, oh, actually, I know that this therapist is a network, you're naturally just going to get more referrals that way because you are speaking to a targeted audience in that moment, which is the insurance carrier that they have. So I see one of the pros being that you are naturally just going to get more referrals, whether it's from word of mouth, whether it's from your Psychology Today or other online directories, or it's from the actual insurance company, because people are going to see your network with insurance and that's immediately going to draw them to you. And that brings me to the next benefit or the pro, which is if you're a network with insurance, I think it makes marketing and targeting your audience a lot easier simply because you are able to quickly identify on your website, on your Psychology Today listing, or wherever that you're located online, that you're in network with specific insurances. And then if someone is searching therapists near me in network with a specific insurance, you're naturally going to populate as someone of interest, of potential, like that fits their criteria. And so it makes marketing, I think, a lot easier because people are strictly being funneled to you because you have that listing on your online profile. And so it's just naturally making it easier for people to find you, which is helping your marketing, which means if you're in network with insurance, a big pro is you actually might have to do a lot less marketing or advertising, especially like paid for advertising, because you being networked with specific insurances or even multiple insurances is naturally going to do that marketing for you and keep funneling people right to you, even if you don't try. And I have several therapist colleagues who they don't really spend a lot of money at all on marketing because they're a network with multiple insurances. They just have that listed on their online profile and on their website. And that keeps the traffic flowing. And they don't have to spend a lot of extra time or money putting themselves out there and trying to find clients because people are finding them very quickly that way. So all of those things, in my opinion, are huge pros to being in network with insurance. This last pro I think is really, really important is when you are contracted with insurance, you have a set rate. And so there is no guessing how much am I going to make or how much is the client going to be able to afford. And there's also no worry about am I going to have to offer this client a potential sliding scale or reduce my rate because I'm worried that they're going to not be able to pay my rate. When you're contracted with insurance, there is already a set rate in your contract of what you're going to get reimbursed. And so you don't even have to worry about that. It is already done for you, and you can go ahead and anticipate, hey, I know that this person has, the specific insurance and my contracted rate is X amount. And so that's what I'm going to make. Easy peasy. It's already done. It's already identified for me. And so if you are the person who really wants to know how much you're going to make, you want there to be a steady stream of clients, you want there to be little marketing done on your part, then I think the pros of insurance are really great and something to consider. But of course, just like with anything else, there are absolutely cons to being a network with insurance from my perspective. So let's talk a little bit now about the cons and see where insurance seems to be ranking in terms of what you feel like is the answer to your question here. So this is going to be confusing, but I just said a set rate is a pro. I also think it's a con. So why might that be? Well, when you are contracted with an insurance provider, you can't just decide that you want to raise your rate because of operating costs have increased or because you haven't raised your rates in a couple of years and you feel like that you need to offset anything that you're paying for when it comes to running the business. When you're contracted with insurance, your rate is your rate. And I've heard a lot of therapists struggling to get their rate increased after they already have a set number locked into their contract. If you have an experience like that, please let me know down in the comments below because I I don't want to speak too far into that because I am in private practice and I'm not taking insurance. And so I personally haven't had to argue with insurance about me needing a raised rate. But if you have, let me know what that looked like and if you were successful or not in the comments below. But for me, a set rate is a con as well because I can't raise my rate. And so I'm really locked in there. And I don't know about you, but costs really increase every year. I am constantly seeing every year where something goes up in terms of fee, whether it's credit card processing fees, whether it's my EHR, whether it's my phone bill, whether it's my internet. Like I am constantly seeing fees increase. And so the con for me is well, if my contract never increases, then I eventually am losing money because my operating costs increase, my revenue is not increasing unless I take on more clients. And so if I just stay at a full caseload of X amount of clients, but my rate never increases, yet operating costs increase, then I eventually do lose money if I don't take on more clients or I have other potential like revenue streams. So for me, the set rate is also a con, and it really just depends upon how you want to look at it. This next big con for me is when you're contracted with insurance, you are not immune to the fact that there may be disputes or clawbacks from insurance. And so, yes, you are submitting to the insurance for the patient or the client every time that you see them with the hope and promise, because you're contracted, right, that you are going to be reimbursed. However, insurance does get the final say. And so, if for any reason insurance wants to dispute your claim, they want to say, I don't want to pay for this, or they say, no, I think that we're going to hold payment and review this further, then you are, for lack of a better term, you are up shit creek without a paddle, right? Like you have no say over that. They are holding the money until you get it. So for me, that is a massive con because I like to know that, hey, this is a set amount, you're going to pay it, this is the date that I'm going to get it, and then we can move on. If I have to deal with the fact that insurance is going to withhold that, they're going to dispute that, or they're not going to immediately pay me out what I am thinking that I'm going to get, then that's very stressful for me personally. And I feel like that's a big con that you have to really factor in. Another con in line with that is it takes a lot of time to do the billing piece if billing is not running smoothly. So when I was starting out in private practice, I had never done my own billing. Every place I'd worked previously when I was licensed did the billing for me. They had massive billing departments. So it was daunting sounding to me to think of having to deal with insurance, having to dispute claims, having to chase after the money piece. And what I've heard from therapists that are in private practice is sometimes, despite all that you do, you are still going to encounter times where you have to talk to insurance, you have to wait on the phone for them, you have to do prior authorizations, you have to do reviews every so often to make sure that they feel like that the client still needs services and that they are going to continue to pay. And you also have to have time to do the billing aspect and chase down any disputes if they arise. And that's a big time suck, in my opinion, especially if you are like me who doesn't know the first thing about how to do that in a way that seems timely and efficient and doesn't require me to work hours upon hours extra a week. And this is, of course, if billing doesn't go smoothly. If billing does go smoothly, that's a lot less time. So for me, some of the big cons there are one, time. It takes time to sit on the phone with insurance. It takes time to dispute claims that are denied. It takes time to file insurance. Another con would be not having a lot of say in whether they're going to approve something. And then a third con would be the hoops that you have to jump through, which again are time consuming when it comes to prior authorizations, whether it comes to, treatment audits and reviews and making sure that you are documenting appropriately and making sure that you are saying what you need to say when it comes to authorizations to get the client's benefits, utilized. And this is all a big time suck and in my opinion. And so if these are things that are already sounding like, ugh, they might be cons for you too. They're definitely for me. But again, there's a lot of pros to it. So you really have to kind of balance out, do the pros outweigh the cons? Do the cons outweigh the pros? Are we kind of in the middle there? What kind of makes sense? But for me, those are the cons. Now let's go self pay or private pay. You can say it either way. Private pay, in my opinion, gives you a lot more flexibility, which is, I think, a huge pro. So I get the flexibility of setting my rate and deciding what I want. I don't have to wait for insurance to set the rate for me or to try to haggle with insurance to give me the rate that I feel like makes the most sense. I'm able to quickly look at what I want to make, how many hours a week I want to work, what my fees are, what are my operating costs, and then come up with a number that makes the most sense for me. So a huge pro to private or self pay is you get to set that amount. And like I mentioned earlier, you get to change that amount at any point if you want to. So if you feel like you need to raise your rate, you can do that. If you want to offer a sliding scale or reduced rate for a client, you can do that. Which, if you're contracted by insurance and you want to offer someone a sliding scale rate, they would have to acknowledge and sign something opting out of insurance where they couldn't use those benefits at all, which kind of gets a little hairy. And so a pro for me is if I want to offer a reduced rate, I want to offer a sliding scale, I can do that. I quickly set that fee. And if I ever want to raise my rate, I can totally do that. I don't have to argue for that either. So, one of the biggest pros, I think, and what I've seen in my practice is I can choose the rate that I want to set that looks the best for me in my financial situation, that accurately quantifies my time and what it's worth, and also seems to make the most sense financially for me. A little bit ago, I was mentioning that a con to being in network with insurance is that you do have to set aside time to do billing and to address any billing issues that arise. If you're not really up to date on the billing game and what that looks like, then that actually might be a huge learning curve that takes some time. And so, a pro to being self pay is it actually frees you up a lot of time when it comes to billing. I have a self pay practice, and so I don't have to deal with any of that. My billing is done rather quickly and it really is not taking up a lot of extra time, and it frees me up to work on other things, which I feel like are areas that I'd rather be focusing on and spending my time anyways. And in line with that, when you are self pay, there are no callbacks, there are no claim denials. It is you set the rate, you get paid, that's it. And unless someone has a card that gets declined, which I mean does happen, and I don't think that's with like malicious intent. You know, cards get declined, cards get compromised. But besides those instances, when I am self-pay, I don't have to wait for reimbursement, which is another really big pro for me. I don't have to wait for this to be filed and insurance to approve it, which could take a couple of weeks or more, and then finally reimburse me. I say, this is my rate. You have to pay at the time of the appointment. You pay it, I get paid, we move on, which is a huge bonus and pro in my eyes. So those are all of the pros that I feel like really stick out for me at the moment with being self-pay. If you feel like I've missed something, definitely let me know below. But let's move on to the cons, because just like I said with insurance, there are cons to everything and there are cons to being self pay. Now, you may be wondering, well, insurance isn't really sounding that great, or self pay is sounding really great. What do you mean there are cons? And there are. In my time in private practice, I've definitely noticed that when it comes to the cons or just the drawbacks to being self pay, when I was talking earlier about insurance really funneling clients to you and being a great marketing tool, when you're self pay, you don't have that. You do not have anything that is drawing a client to you based off of strictly their payer source. So I I am having to do a lot of organic marketing and networking and advertising to help clients find me, and I'm really having to do more legwork in getting people to find who I am and feeling like that I am the person that they want to work with, which means that you are going to grow slower and you are not going to see the referrals come in as quickly as if you were in network with insurance. And that is a con, because if you are, especially if you're just starting out, really trying to grow your practice fast and you're going the self pay route, you are naturally going to find that it is a slower growth and you are not filling your practice as quickly, simply because people are opting to use their insurance. People are searching for therapists specifically in network with insurance, which means they're not finding your listings or your advertising, and they're going that route. And you will have to wait for people who really are in a position where they can either use out of network benefits, or they don't have insurance, or they're really looking for your specialty and they're not as concerned about finding someone in network with their insurance, which all means slower growth. The clients still come. I promise you, the clients still come. It's just a slower growth, which you really have to think about. Does that make sense with where you're at in growing your private practice or in the private practice that you're trying to join? And what makes the most financial sense? And in line with what makes the most financial sense, one of the cons that comes with being self pay is that that doesn't make financial sense for everybody. You are naturally going to be deselected from people's choices when it comes to selecting a therapist, simply because they can't afford your self pay rate. And this is just the reality of being self pay, because a lot of times people really, like I said earlier, they need to use their insurance benefits. And so you are just naturally going to find that there are going to be times where people really, really, really want to work with you and they seem like your ideal client, but the financial piece just doesn't make sense. And this is actually the case when you're in network with insurance too, because just because you're network with insurance doesn't mean that you don't have a high deductible. It doesn't mean that insurance has great mental health benefits. It doesn't mean that you don't have a high copay. So this could be a problem, honestly, in either direction, but you are, in my experience, more likely to see someone who can't pay your self pay rate versus someone who can't pay what the insurance is setting their amount to be. Now, that also heavily depends upon your target audience and what your niche is. And I just recently did a video on how to help you figure out what your niche is very quick and simply. So if you haven't seen that, make sure that you go and look at that to help you figure that out. But your niche, your target audience, location, where you live, the type of specialty service that you provide is all going to factor into your fee and whether or not someone can afford that self pay rate or they feel like that is feasible for them. So it could be a con if you are self pay with someone simply saying, I just can't afford that rate. And you're just going to have that and you're going to have to deal with that. And the last con is it takes a lot of patience, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of marketing, a lot of being strategic to really help you still fill your practice with self pay clients. And again, it's totally doable. I myself have done it, but it is going to take more time and more patience and more grit and determination on your part, which if you feel like you don't have a lot of time to devote to marketing and networking, you don't have a lot of time to devote to waiting, you don't have a lot of patience when it comes to steady, slow growth with your practice, it's probably going to be a con to try to figure out how to go the self pay route. Now, this is a lot to think about. And so I have some questions that have come up for you to help you figure out specifically what makes the most sense for you. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there is no wrong answer here. And I really encourage you to just cancel out all the noise that's going on in the mental health field about what you should be doing and what you should be charging, because I think it's crap. I think it is wasted breath. And I think that there is a space for everybody. There's a space for someone to be offering pro bono services, sliding scale, full fees, reduced fees, higher fees, and network with insurance. Like, I think that there is a place for all of us because there's clients that fit all of those categories. So there is not a wrong answer here, but I really encourage you to push out that noise if you're getting any of that noise online or from colleagues, and really just think about how you would answer the following questions. And hopefully, this helps you figure out when it comes to self pay versus insurance, what makes the most sense for you. So, the first question would be, do I mind a slower, gradual growth when it comes to billing my practice? Is that something that is a pain point for me? Is that something that causes worry or stress or anxiety? Do I mind, and can I make that work? The second question is, do I feel like that I have the time to devote to dealing with billing? And if I don't know a lot about it, also time and willingness to learn what I don't know about billing and devote time making sure that I get paid by the contracts that I am signing. Again, I would love to tell you that that is not something that you're going to have to devote a lot of time to, but that has not been the experience that I've heard a lot of therapists going down the road of. And I've actually even heard therapists struggling to get paid at times for claims that are very justifiable, that clients need those services that happened weeks ago. So, do you have the time to devote to doing your billing and to learning what you don't know about billing to make sure that you get paid? Because obviously you're going to want to get paid. The next question is, what makes the most sense in terms of your goals, your financial situation, and how quickly you need to fill your practice? Because these points really do need to be considered when you're deciding which route to go down. If you decide to go down a route because people say you need to go down that route, but it doesn't make financial sense, it doesn't, you know, it brings a lot of stress, or you are feeling like it just doesn't align with what you're looking for in your practice, then that's not the best decision to make. I really encourage you to think about those 3 points and answer the question, what makes the most sense to me? And then the last question is, does maybe a hybrid model or me utilizing a billing platform to do out of network benefits for clients make the most sense? Because you really don't have to go down the one route or the other. You are absolutely allowed to say, actually, I want to do a little bit of both. Maybe I want to be in network with one or two insurances, but also really market me as a self pay practice. Or maybe you want to do all self pay, but you're going to use an online platform that helps you submit out of network claims in order to help clients get reimbursed for out of network benefits such as Thrizer. Or maybe you're like, you know what? I don't really want to deal with the billing aspect. I want a company to do that for me. And so I'm going to join one of these growing online platforms that says they will do the billing for me and they will help funnel clients to me. And then I am in network with insurance, but I'm also not having to spend all the time doing the billing. What makes the most sense? There are positive and negatives to everything I just said, by the way. And that's not a quick fix or a quick solution to address or cancel out the cons I've mentioned, but there are definitely options for you. Again, there's really no wrong answer here, but the question becomes, well, maybe do I want this to look a little less cookie cutter and do a little bit of both, or incorporate some other strategies or utilize other services to help me bridge the gaps where I feel like that I want to go down this route, but I don't want to spend this resource, this time doing that, and I could outsource that and have somebody else do that for me. Now, obviously, there's a lot to think about here. I myself, when I opened up my practice, I really didn't want to deal with insurance. I felt like I didn't know what I didn't know. And I also didn't like the fact that insurance oftentimes denied claims. They create a lot of red tape and hoops that you had to jump through. And I also felt like I just didn't know enough about billing to make that a successful part of my practice. And so I went the self pay route, and I did see a lot slower growth. They come, but they come a lot slower. And I did see that I had to quickly figure out what I was going to do about marketing and advertising. And I didn't know a lot about that either, but I had to make a conscious decision to put a lot of time and energy into that basket and continue to do that throughout the entire course of my time in private practice. But for me, it made the most sense. I wanted that autonomy. I didn't want to have to deal with insurance. And I really felt like that it just aligned with my goals for my practice. So I know it's possible to go that route if you want to. And I have a lot of colleagues who are in network with insurance and they did not have to deal with the issues that I had. And yes, they had their own issues that they had to figure out and work out, but they're still in private practice. They're doing well. They're making good money. They're helping clients. So, again, not a wrong answer here, but just sharing my experience because I do think sometimes it can be helpful just to hear what other therapists have done and are doing to make this work for them. So, I'm curious, what makes the most sense for you? What seems like it aligns with your goals? What feels right for your financial situation? What do you feel like makes the most sense? Again, cancel out all the noise out there and just answer the questions for yourself. There is no wrong answer, and there is a space for every kind of practice in our profession. It's not something that you have to do exactly like your colleague or your friend just because that's what they're doing. I really encourage you, do what you feel like you need to do for you. And if you do it strategically, clients will come either way. Well, I've given you a lot to think about. I hope this was helpful. I hope it's got your wheels turning. I hope you feel a little bit of clarity. And I hope that if nothing else, it helps you think about what makes the most sense for you. Alrighty, until next time, bye.